What's up, players? It's your girl FJ back with another video from my frisky ponies. Today's video is in response to a comment that I received in the past couple days from a viewer named Joe who writes in something that struck a chord with me. I've been attempting to grow, he says, and be more sociable, but with poor results. In fact, I think it is actually making me sadder as I continue to fail. Yeah, I've been there and continue to be there at times. Joe writes, at what point do I just embrace my introversion and atypical approaches to life and business? I think loneliness is more desirable than feeling unwanted. Yeah, I totally get that. This is like a deep running theme of my channel since the beginning, is this lifelong struggle. The struggle is real, that I will go somewhere, I'll go to a party or a happy hour, although now if I go to a happy hour, I'm just getting, a Diet Coke, but you know what I'm saying. And you're like, I am going to pretend to be an extrovert. I'm going to go and I'm going to meet some people. I'm going to make some friends. I'm going to chat up some nice looking honeys over at the bar. It's not something you would ever do normally, of your own volition, and so you're forcing yourself to do it because you're like, if I want to be more social, then I have to do this. I have to get out of my comfort zone and do this. Of course. But you're an introvert, so you're like a baby trying to walk on your legs, but you don't know how to walk. That was a bizarre metaphor. And so you go up to these strangers and you're trying to be outgoing and your heart's slamming against your chest and you just make a fool of yourself. I know what you're going through. First of all, here's what you got to do. Know what you want. Like, what do you actually want? And then you need to be honest with yourself, because the problem is when what you want, what you really want, comes into conflict with your limitations, whether self-imposed or real. So if you want to be social and your personality is such that it's very difficult for you. Maybe sometimes we say introversion, but what we really mean, like I'm not here to project on anyone watching or Joe who wrote in. I just know from my experience, my introversion is also compounded by a degree of shyness and social anxiety. So there's that mixed into it. And I don't know if that's the same for you, but oftentimes things I want, like I want to be the guy who can just walk up to anyone and start a conversation, but that comes into a big conflict with my reality, my set of given circumstances. When defining what you want, if you are not really clear on those two things in that conflict, you might convince yourself that what you want is not anything that will come into conflict with your circumstances. The commenter, Joe, who wrote in, he seems to know what he wants, even though it's in conflict with his introversion. But I think a lot of times what we do is we tell ourselves, well, I don't want that stuff, because we know it would be hard to get, even though we really want it. But we know that we're going to have to face some of our own demons to get it. So you need to be very self-aware and be like, am I talking myself out of what I really want? And it can feel good, like it can feel really good to say something like I said and be like, I gave up trying to come out of my shell. I didn't really want that. I didn't want to be more social. I'm just doing what comes naturally to me and being an introvert. Quitting feels good because there's that relief. Just because it feels good, though, doesn't mean that it's a sign that we're going in the right direction. It just means, I went from a place of tension and feeling uncomfortable to a place of comfort and feeling fine, feeling back to normal. Glad that's over. So be honest with yourself, be self-aware, and think to yourself, is what I want really what I want? Is what I think I want really what I want? Am I talking myself out of what I want? Just be honest with yourself and see what it says to you. Just see. Why don't we stop for a quick commercial break? Thanks for sitting through that. Now then, secondly, moving on, don't use introversion or shyness or social anxiety, or don't use anything really, but these are the specific things we're talking about. Don't use introversion as an excuse. There's a fine line here. There's a fine line of pretending I'm not an introvert, which would be one unhealthy way to go. And then on the other hand, being like, oh, I'm an introvert. I can't talk to people. It's impossible. I could never talk to a stranger. I could never cold call someone that I admire and try to get a business contact. You know, I could never approach that guy or girl at the coffee shop and get their number. I could never do that. I'm an introvert. I could never be the life of the party. Those are excuses. It's like, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't do that. You need to be honest with yourself once again and ask yourself, is what I'm dealing with actually introversion or is it fear? Because I feel like if someone is just truly introverted, but they're not fearful, they don't have anxiety about social situations, they don't fear the failure of a social situation, introversion is not really that big of a deal. It just means, okay, this might drain me, but okay, I'll go out and do it because I know I want to. And maybe you do it. Maybe an introvert will go out less and try to be social less than an extrovert. Maybe once a fortnight rather than, every day. But that's different than feeling afraid and avoiding it because of that. So be honest. Is it really just introversion or is there fear there somewhere? A lot of us are doing that. A lot of us so-called introverts, not to say that you aren't an introvert, but you're using introversion. I do it too. You use it to cover a wide variety of things in your psychology, a lot of which are really fear and anxiety. So be honest. Be honest with yourself. Thirdly, this is related to the second point, is to accept and own your limitations. So the last thing I said was don't use introversion as an excuse, but also be realistic. Don't be in denial. Don't say, oh, this is something I can beat out of myself. Because on the one hand, social anxiety and fear, that you could get rid of that. But introversion, that's part of your personality. You're never going to get rid of it. You can train yourself to handle social situations a little better. But I'm sorry to tell you that the amount that you get drained by social interactions or whatever else you would consider to be introversion, that's not going to change. That's part of your DNA. So own that. Own your limitations and be like, look, I can really only go out once a week. I can really only, at this point in my journey, it's difficult for me to have the energy to do X, Y, Z. Without going into excuse land, but the point of this is to not beat yourself up over it. So you're trying to be more social, so you find it difficult. Don't beat yourself up. Now I say limitations, that's not to be negative here. Because everything has limitations. Extroversion has limitations. Maybe a better thing would be to just say, own your circumstances. Own it. Understand it. Be honest about it. This could go really for anything in life, not just introversion, but there's a lot of stuff where we make excuses on the one hand because, I'm dealing with this thing, so that's my excuse for not going after the things I want. Or on the other hand, we will hate ourselves for being a certain way without just accepting and owning that, these are the cards I've been dealt. Okay, let's move forward from there. Now then, moving on to the part of the question that was like, it hurts more to go out and fail over and over than it would be to just stay at home. In a nutshell, that's what he was saying. Yeah, that would be a lot easier. And being rejected over and over is not fun. But here's a couple things to keep in mind. That the more that you keep doing it, the easier it will get, and not in a short period of time. I mean, over a long period of time. You can't expect to just do it a few times and then all of a sudden it's easy. That's one thing. But then the other thing is you've got to realize that even the people who are very successful at going out and being social, people who can walk up to anybody and start up a conversation, guys who can go chat up some girl on the street and get her number, those people have also dealt with a lot of rejection, and probably a lot more than you've dealt with, because they're just doing it more often. Extroverts, they're just trying to ping off of everyone else all the time because that's what they do. And so they have a bigger success rate because they have a bigger failure rate, you know? And so when you're working as an introvert who it's difficult to motivate yourself to get out there and meet some people, when you fail a couple of times, it can be really discouraging because it's like, man, it took me so much. A lot of times in baseball, hitters who hit a lot of home runs also strike out the most. That's because they're swinging hard at everything that comes their way. And then on the other hand, the people who don't, the analogy kind of falls apart there. But if you're the kind of player, the kind of hitter who goes up to bat and it just takes so much energy to get up there and so much energy to swing the bat, if you miss, it's like, oh crap, that took so much out of me. But if there's someone else and they can just keep swinging the bat, they don't care. They're going to be swinging a lot more and failing a lot more, but they're also going to run into a lot more hits over time. Here's one more thing to keep in mind. As you're out there and it's tough and you're failing and you just want to give up, all it takes is one success to make it all worth it. Perhaps you've heard of the 80-20 rule, that 80% of your success comes from 20% of the effort. This is like a principle that you can see like everywhere in life. With a business, 80% of the income comes from 20% of the customers, stuff like that. When you go out, you're going to have, let's just say you're going to have an 80% failure rate. And when you're an introvert and you're not, it takes a lot of effort to go out. It's difficult to rack up the numbers here. But when you finally get a hit and all you need is one, that one success or the couple successes you get out of all the failures will make up for it and be the majority of the payoff later. That will be a lot of the happiness and satisfaction that you get from being more social will be from that small amount of success. So yeah, on the one hand, accept that you're an introvert. Accept it. Own it. Own your weirdness and your atypical approach to life. Own it. Don't try to change it. But don't use it as an excuse. And don't use it as like, an equivalent of, oh, I'm socially handicapped. No, it's just a circumstance. It's just a parameter that you have to work within. And furthermore, with the continued failures, I feel you, man. But just keep going, because you can tell yourself, you can maybe help yourself out a bit by saying, hey, the more failures I get, then the more successes I'll have later. Because it's a lot of being social, making new friends, making new relationships, even in business, making business contacts, finding clients. A lot of that is just a numbers game. You just keep going, you keep failing, and the more failures you have, eventually, the more likely it is that you'll find something really good. Thanks for watching. Smash like if you enjoyed the video. Share it with your friends. Share it with an introvert friend. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't done so already, and that you've hit the bell button. And until next time, stay cool and attractive.